Graham was like, we gotta get there, man. He stopped at Hell's Angel. He goes, come on, let's get on these bikes. Graham had told Phil if he ever died, he wanted Phil to kidnap him and take him out to the desert and burn him. I was thinking of leaving, and she said, oh, you should call Don and Glenn. They're forming a band. But then one of the Manson family killed somebody down the street.
You and Henley wrote Witchy Woman together.
I poured a beer on Glenn Fry's head during the band meeting. At the last show, he gave me a big hug and said, it's been great having you out here. This is not the end.
All right, we are in here for another great episode of Drifting Cowboy Podcast. We are in here with Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, founding member of the Eagles, member of the Flying Burrito Brothers, and an icon in every sense of the word, Mr. Bernie Leadon. Bernie, thank you for coming in with us and
you're welcome
and joining us today.
I was just being an icon.
I've been looking really forward to sitting down and having a conversation with you.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, I want to just get right into it and start all the way back from the beginning.
Adam and Eve, let's go.
When you were a kid, you were kind of raised all over the place, wasn't you?
Yeah, Minnesota till I was 10, San Diego till I was 16, 17, then Gainesville, Florida for about 3 years, and then I got called to L.A.
Well, how old were you when you started playing instruments?
So I've been telling this story like this. So my mom was this great 40s pop music stride piano player. She was really good vibe, good feel. And when she was a high school student, she worked in a department store, went back when sheet music was how you had a hit record more than records, They sold sheet music of a hit song. But people would come in and look at the new songs on the display and they'd go, they can't hear it, they can't play it, unless it wasn't a record. So they would have a high school student or somebody cheap to be there sitting at a piano so that the people could take a piece of sheet music over and go, would you play this? I want to make sure I want to buy it, And so she did that, and then I was her oldest child, and back then she didn't have to work. And she had almost nothing to do. It was before TV. She didn't really listen to the radio that much. And so she just sat there and played this great old piano all the time. And what I realized later is I was in utero, and her stomach was pressed up against the keyboard of the acoustic piano. So I was receiving all those vibrations, right?
Yeah.
And then she played in church, and my dad sang in the choir, and then I started piano at 6 and trombone when I was maybe 13, 12 maybe. And then I was in a marching band, concert band. Then I discovered folk music and banjo and guitar when I was about 13. And just became obsessed with it to the point where I realized that the bus pass to my prep school, high school, the bus pass was also good to transfer to the bus that went to the guitar store where my bluegrass friends hung out. So I would go down there instead of going to school. And I basically went to school for banjo, by hanging out at this guitar shop. And then I was playing professionally by the time I was 15.
Yeah.
And then I went to Florida and had a top 40 band. And got an electric guitar, and Don Felder was in my high school band, and Tom Petty and my younger brother, Tom Leadon, and Tom Petty, they're both 4 or 5 years younger than me. They had another band. It was like the junior high band. And then when we started playing college gigs, they started playing the high school gigs, and they're just a few years behind, And then I went to LA in '67, and then Petty and my brother's band changed their name to Mudcrutch, and then of course that got resurrected a few years ago.
Yeah.
But country was always country music was a big part of folk music because folk music embraced bluegrass and old timey music like Uncle Dave Macon,
right,
and stuff like that. And
right.
Also all the old songs that everybody played, all the traditional Scotch-Irish songs, that a lot of bluegrass and the fiddle playing in bluegrass. And country comes largely from Scotch-Irish fiddle music, So it was I guess my musical education was everything,
Yeah.
except I wouldn't play saxophone. I couldn't do that.
Well, I didn't even know you played piano. I knew you played pretty much anything with strings, but I didn't think about.
Well, piano has strings too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So saxophone is about.
Well, yeah, just anything. It buzzed funny. When I'm not doing that.
So a multi instrumentalist.
Well, I guess so. But everybody who teaches piano, a lot of music teachers say, piano's the best place to start, really, because it's all laid out in the keyboard graphically in front of you.
Right.
That note only exists there. Where people may not realize this, but a certain note in the range of the guitar could be in 4 different places on the fretboard. So I don't read music notes on a page on guitar, but I can on piano.
Right.
Guitar's harder
Right.
to read.
Well, you briefly mentioned there being in Gainesville and all the people that were there at the same time. You mentioned Tom Petty and all these other guys who were there.
Stephen Stills, the Allman Brothers, yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible that y'all are all there at the same time.
Yeah. And, and some other acts, too. Blues artists, too.
So how did y'all all go to like the same school, or was there a place that y'all met up and
Yeah,
played
there was
together?
only one basic high school at the time, Gainesville High School, and so Felder and I were in some classes together, and Petty went there too, and my brother.
Must have been something in the water there.
Yeah, that's what people say. I'll tell you exactly what the reason is why everybody played. Is first of all, there was a guitar store that gave credit to kids, but they knew if we could always get a gig at the University of Florida fraternity parties, so we could make enough money to pay the note on the guitars and amps. So we all had Fender amps and Gibson guitars, and we had good equipment. Yeah, that's the main reason.
You mentioned your brother played with Tom Petty. Were you around Tom a good bit?
Yeah, I just wrote a song about him, actually. That's kind of the history of me knowing him, and I had to go back and I looked up what year he was born. He's only 3 years younger than me, but I met him when he was 14 and I was 16, 17. So,
Wow.
I know.
Wow. And so from Gainesville, you went back to California, right?
Yeah, so the bluegrass group that owned the guitar store that did lessons and had little shows in San Diego, they had a bluegrass group called the Scottsville Squirrel Barkers, and the mandolin player was Chris Hillman, who later was the bass player in the Byrds. But one of the guys who owned the music store invited me to come out in 1967. We moved to Florida in '64, and that's when I met Felder and Petty. But I went back in summer of '67 because he had a group on Capitol Records that was going to make their second record, and a guy left their group. It was actually a singing group. They didn't have a rhythm section. And so I went out to join them on Capitol Records in '67 to make their second record. And the A&R guy, the producer guy that signed them, and now I was working with, he had signed the Beach Boys to Capitol Records. And
Oh, wow.
his name was Nick Venet. He was a very well-known guy. And so I was in another group that was working with him that he'd signed was Linda Ronstadt and the Stone Ponies. And they already had a hit, or around the time I got out there, they had a hit with different drum.
Right.
And so he invited me to play on their record. So I was doing sessions with Ronstadt from the time I got there.
Yeah.
And the band since none of them played bass or drums, the band was the Wrecking Crew, that played on everybody's records.
Yeah, yeah.
So that was a fabulous experience for me to play with those musicians in those studios. And,
I can imagine.
yeah.
Well, you were with a couple of groups yourself before the Burritos, right?
Yeah, so the band I'm talking about was called Hearts and Flowers, and it was kind of a folky singing group of 3 guys, but they had become enamored with the Bee Gees, the early Bee Gees records, and so that we had some kind of Bee Gees vocals on it. So anyway, there was no hits or much interest in that group. And from there, I joined Dillon and Clark, which was Gene Clark from the Byrds, great writer-singer, and Doug Diller, the banjo player from the Dillards, who was my banjo hero. And so I started sleeping on Doug's couch, and we'd stay up all night and play banjo without picks, so we didn't wake people up.
Yeah. How'd you go?
That was the group right before the Burritos. How'd
you go from there to the Burritos?
Well, Dillon and Clark was on A&M Records, and so were the Burritos. So after 1 year with Dillon and Clark, it kind of also didn't have any hits, and so the bass player left the Burritos, and so Chris Hillman invited me to join them, and Chris had been bass player in the Birds, so he switched back to bass in the Burritos, and they invited me in as a guitar player. So that was cool.
I got to know, if you know, I'm sure you do, how the Flying Burrito Brothers got their name.
Actually, I'm not 100% sure. Maybe you know the story better than I.
I don't. I just thought about it just now. I was like,
okay, well, it used to be the Flying So-and-so family was like a trapeze
yeah.
circus thing.
Right.
You know, the Walendas or somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they were high wire trapeze acts. So the flying meaning trapeze, you know. So that's, I think, and then Burritos was just to be silly in connection to California. You know?
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Well, the late 60s, that era, you, Chris Hillman, Gram Parsons, all these guys are credited with creating what would become the genre of country rock.
Yeah.
How did that come to be? How did y'all make that sound?
Well, I would put it more that the Burritos became a focal point for and made a creatively good enough record, you know, songs and everything. Their first album is the one I'm identifying, The Gilded Palace of Sin, that had all those really interesting songs.
Right.
About things like the apocalypse.
Yeah.
So it was not just the musical styles that were joining, because Gram was a country aficionado. He knew hundreds of songs he could just sing off the top of his head at any time. But the lyrics are, you know, this old town's filled with sin, it'll swallow you in. And it's about, you know, the guy on the 31st floor in the skyscraper, and it's all going to burn, you know. And so it was very apocalyptic, biblically apocalyptic imagery sandwiched on top of country music, but that was also being cross-pollinated with R&B. There's a couple of straight-up R&B songs that Gram wrote on that album.
Yeah.
They're fabulous songs. I mean, I'm surprised they're not covered more. But so there were all these elements: rock, country, folk, and R&B, you know, and other stuff, gospel. So it was really just kind of a little bit of wide open latitude to explore. And one of the things I think is important is that they were signed to A&M Records in L.A., not a country label, a regular pop rock. And also they had Brazilian people on there, and Herb Alpert, one of the partners in A&M, the A of A&M, was a trumpet player that had a bunch of instrumental hits, you know. One of them was called Tijuana, and it was Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, and they were kind of Hispanic, you know, Italian. I mean, I don't know what it was, but the main thing, it was pop, but it was an L.A. rock pop label that signed the Burritos and Dillon and Clark.
Yeah.
Not a Nashville-based label. So Nashville-based labels, they're part of the big multinational music companies and labels, but the Nashville division is focused on strictly country music, and the other big thing in town, of course, is the contemporary Christian genre, right? Those are the two types of music that are based in Nashville, and so there's more of a filter with what gets recorded and who gets signed in Nashville than there was out there at that time.
Yeah. Well, what was Gram Parsons like to work with?
Gram was an amazing guy. I mean, first of all, he only made it to 26. So most of the time I worked with him, I was 21, 22, maybe, well, 22 probably by the time Gram got kicked out of the Burritos by Chris Hillman because he just wouldn't show up. Gram decided he wanted to be in the Rolling Stones, so he hung out with them, and stayed up all night, and he couldn't make our rehearsals anymore. So he was dropped by Chris. But Gram was an incredibly interesting personality, and there was something deep South, kind of like almost like New Orleans or Savannah, like that's just a little mysterious, in the Carolinas and Georgia. He lived in Waycross, Georgia, and his family was based in Winter Park, Florida. But there's just something kind of, all the Spanish moss on the live oak trees, and there's just something kind of mysterious down there. And there was tragedy in Gram's family. There was alcoholism in his family. But he had been to really good schools. In fact, back to your question about where did this come from, he went to Harvard for like one semester, except he forgot to go to class. And so he met some interesting people there. But he started a country rock band in Boston, of all places, called the International Submarine Band. And then he dropped out of school and he moved to L.A. And so then he formed the band with Chris. And the story with him meeting Chris, they were standing in line at a bank, and they just chatted each other up and found out they had so much in common, and so they just started hanging out. And then Chris got him in the Byrds. They made Sweetheart of the Radio album, which a lot of people say is the original country rock album.
Yeah.
The one that was with a big band that made a splash,
Right.
But before it even got released, Gram was out of that group. And
Yeah.
Chris and Gram had formed the Burritos. So Roger McGuinn replaced a bunch of Gram's vocals on the Sweetheart album, which is all just part of the mythology of Gram, And then they made this brilliant first album, and right after that, and they used their advance money from A&M to buy nudie suits, but they put marijuana plants and pills on Gram's, suit, and they just put whatever they wanted on the suit, and they had to put sequins all over it. So it was, again, like even in fashion, was cross-pollinating with how Porter Wagoner or whoever, their suits. I mean, he had wagon wheels because Porter Wagoner, but Gram had pot plants and pills on his, and beautiful greenery. Actually, they were a pot plant greenery going down the legs, all green on a white suit, green marijuana plant with sequins all over it. Man. But I wasn't in the band yet, so they spent all their money on the nudie suits. And then I saw him do an open mic night at the Troubadour Club, and they were horrible. It's like they looked so good, like Super Bowl halftime ready, but they had forgotten to rehearse.
Yeah.
They were horrible.
They spent all their time designing nudie suits.
Yeah. So that made such an impression on me that you could look so good and fail so spectacularly. So anyway, then the bass player left, and Gram was still there, and I joined the band, and we played the Altamont, the anti-Woodstock event, where that was really weird.
Yeah, I saw a video of that just the other day. You guys were playing, and it was pretty incredible because they panned and zoomed, and there's Mick Jagger and Keith Richards and Neil Young. They're all just standing on the side watching you guys, and I didn't really know much about that whole event because I know a whole lot about just strict country music history, but as I dug into that event, that was a pretty crazy thing.
It was beyond crazy. I mean, they were supposed to be at one outdoor place, like more of like a speedway or something, and the local county heard that the Stones were coming, and they freaked out, and they passed an ordinance overnight that no bands could play there.
Oh wow!
So in the middle of the night, the decision was that we have to find a place, and it was kind of like Woodstock took place on Yasgur's farm, actual farm.
Right.
So they found this place that might have been also a dirt track speedway thing, but little and no infrastructure at all. and they put it on the radio about starting at about 3 a.m. that it got moved and everybody should go out to this place. And they before GPS and everything, there were so many people on the road that the traffic just stopped and people just started getting out of their cars on the interstate, leaving their cars in the traffic lane miles from the place. And we were trying to get in a station wagon, and Sneaky Pete, the steel player, was driving, and we were driving down the breakdown lane. That worked fine at 40 miles an hour until somebody else got the idea right in front of us, and we hit them and went careened down in the ditch, and when everybody was safe, it was okay. But then Gram was like, "We got to get there, man. The Angels." He stopped a Hell's Angel guy, or a couple of them. He goes, "Come on, let's get on these bikes with these guys," and hopped on, ponied in the back. And I hopped on one, and Gram did, and we were the only two that did. So then we went in with the Angels, and then they came in at the top of this amphitheater, and just dirt, kind of sloped like an amphitheater. And there were already probably 5,000 people on blankets. And this guy
Wow.
I was on the back of his bike. He just drove right down through the crowd. And there was no security. The stage was about this high, maybe 3 foot, 4 foot high. No security. And the Angels were the security force, and they were all drinking Red Mountain wine, and they were all getting trashed. And if you really want to see what happened, there's a film called "Gimme Shelter" that's all about it.
Yeah, that crazy one to hire the Hells Angels as security at an event
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. So, and also Woodstock. See, nobody had done shows that big, right? So I think there were, I don't know, there were 300,000 people at Altamont. Can you imagine? There were no porta potties. There was no infrastructure.
Wow.
The PAs couldn't even barely reach the crowd, So there was no infrastructure. Nobody knew how to do that. And Woodstock also wasn't able to deal with the logistics of it. And other festivals failed because the fences couldn't keep the people out. So the tickets were basically no good. And the fences would just fall down, So nobody got paid and all that kind of thing because So it was relatively insane.
Were the Rolling Stones, do you think they were trying to recreate what had happened at Woodstock?
They were trying to get on the bandwagon somehow, but the way that it went down just was out of control, and they could not control it. So there was about 4 bands that went on during the daytime, including the Burritos. The Grateful Dead were supposed to play, but when Garcia found out what it was like, they didn't play. So there was a gap in the afternoon where nobody played for about an hour and a half because the Stones wanted to wait till it got dark so that their lighting would make it be more dramatic, So there was nothing going on stage for about an hour and a half. Also, the guys in the Jefferson Airplane were actually beat up. Marty Balin was beat up on stage by the Angels, who were already getting drunk. They were hitting people with pool cues. So he
Those hired security Hells Angels beat up
they
the
were
talent.
beating up the band on stage.
That's crazy.
So then there was this big pause in the afternoon, and the Stones went on right after dark. And a lot of dynamics, man. Like they played "Sympathy for the Devil," and the Hells Angels, who are all real, actual tough guys, and the Stones were all scrawny, vegetarian hippies from millionaires from the UK, and so you can see it in that film. They're playing "Sympathy for the Devil," and it sounds like ominous and all that. But the Angels are all looking at the Stones. They're all on the side of the stage going, "This is weird, man." Like, we could eat these guys for lunch, And they looked like they were ready to do that, And then somebody was killed by them right in front of the stage while the Stones were playing. That's the truth. Guy was beaten to death by the Angels with pool cues right in front of the stage. So isn't it great that modern country music and rock and roll festivals have such great security? They have bathrooms and they have They have a medical tent, you know, in case somebody ODs. You know, it's like it's much safer now.
Yeah, that sounds like the Wild West.
It was totally the Wild West.
Well, you mentioned a while ago that Gram stopped showing up for rehearsal and stuff because he wanted to be with the Stones. Was that actually a thing, or was that just something that he thought could happen, or was there like an open invitation?
Okay, so then Gram was out of the Burritos, and he was about to leave L.A. to go to the south of France to hang out with the Stones. It turned out to be for the next 6, 8, 12 months. And he said, "Hey, man, why don't you come along?" And I go, "Well, Gram, I'd love to, or that's interesting, but here's the deal. You have a trust fund. You're independently wealthy, right?
Yeah.
I got to work. I don't have any money."
Yeah.
And I was interested in having a career, and
Right.
Gram was interested in becoming a legend or something. He was just on a different, but he had a trust fund. He had money,
Yeah.
so he could just decide to go to the south of France, and he lived with them in their chateau, and he taught Keith all about country music. And in the aftermath of him being out there with him for 6 months, they wrote "Honky Tonk Women" and some others. There's
Dead
a lot-
Flowers.
Yeah, but Gram taught Keith a lot about country music and the repertoire too, and so Keith incorporated that into everything he was writing, and so the Stones brought a country element into their music because of Gram.
When he left, was that the last time you saw Gram?
No. In fact, he used me as a session guy on
Oh, really?
on the 2 solo albums he did.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so I actually was working with him in the studio in L.A. One night, and then I flew to London a couple of days later to do the Eagles' 3rd album. And by the time I got to London, Gram was gone. So that was kind of weird.
Yeah.
And then he didn't actually have a funeral that I'm aware of. There's another whole film about
Yeah.
him getting kidnapped, his body getting kidnapped from air freight by Phil Kaufman, known as the road mangler instead of the road manager. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. And they took and because Gram had told Phil that if he ever died, he wanted Phil to kidnap him and take him out to the desert and burn him.
Yeah.
And so Phil was trying to do that and drove him out in a hearse that he had stolen the body. And this is all in this other film. I can't remember the name of it. And so they lit him on fire, and then Phil left. But there were still fire towers around there, and so a guy saw the fire in the middle of the desert. So he called the fire department, and they put Gram out.
Yeah.
You know, and then eventually his family asserted sovereignty, and came and escorted his remains down to Florida, and they buried them down there.
Yeah, I think I read because there was no, definitive law against stealing a body. I think they got like a $600 littering ticket or something. It's what they ended up getting for all that.
So I mean that's insane. And then he did all that, but he wrote all this great music. Let's get back to that part.
Yeah.
He wrote some fabulous songs, songs, including that one R&B record song I can't remember. Well, actually, on the first Gilded Palace of Sin record, there was 2 songs that were called Hot Burrito No. 1 and Hot Burrito No. 2, and one of those is this really beautiful R&B ballad, and the lyrics are incredible. And
Yeah. Well, from the time that Gram was fired, how long were you with the Burritos after that?
About another year. Chris went and found another singer, Rick Roberts, who kind of was like soft pop, yeah. And he actually had a successful band after that called Firefall. They had hits. But I did that for maybe 8 months. We made the 3rd Burrito album with Rick, and he had a lot of songs, so that was attractive.
Right.
But I wanted out at that point, and so we came off the road in the late summer of '71, and I dropped in McCabe's guitar shop in Santa Monica and told a woman that I knew there that I was thinking of leaving, and she said, "Oh, you should call Don and Glenn. They're forming a band." And they had recently been in Ronstadt's band, and I worked with Ronstadt earlier. So I called up Ronstadt's manager producer and said, "Hey, what's going on?" "Oh yeah, Don and Glenn are putting a band together. You should." I'll put you guys in a rehearsal hall and see what happens, you know. So we went down to SIR, Studio Instrument Rentals, in a small room, smaller than this, and just sat around and played really quietly, but played songs for each other and sang. And they already had Randy Meisner, the tenor singer in the band, bass player. And he was a fabulous tenor singer. And there was already a good blend in the room without me. And I'm a baritone at the bottom of the stack. And so we just kicked songs around, and I went, yeah, this is great, you know. And so we said that day, okay, we're going to be a band. And then Glenn Fry was already signed to David Geffen's management company because he had a duo with John David Souther, J.D. Souther. But the rumor was Geffen wanted to keep J.D. And Glenn had really long kind of hippie hair, and he's an attractive guy, Glenn Fry, but he wasn't pushing that forward at the time. He looked more like a hippie. And so anyway, the rumor was Geffen wanted to keep J.D. and not Glenn, so Glenn was going to get dropped. So Glenn and Henley decided to be a band. They wanted to get one together fast so they could go into Geffen and say, hey, before you drop Glenn, now Glenn is a band.
Yeah.
So we rehearsed enough to go in, and I went with him, and we said, hey, David, you know, we're a band. You want us or not, you know? So he came to one rehearsal and said, okay.
So you jumped straight from the Flying Burrito Brothers into founding the Eagles.
Yeah.
That's incredible. What were those early days like of forming the band?
Well, we had no money. We had no money, and so our first rehearsal hall, we paid $6 an hour. It was really funky, you know. But that's where Geffen came to hear us and went, yeah, okay. I mean, all you need is a place to set up, right? So Henley and Fry roomed together, you know. They had a decent place. I was still, I don't know where I was sleeping. I was just kind of sleeping somewhere with somebody.
Yeah.
And then, but part of Geffen signing us, he gave us a little bit of money. He put us on a weekly stipend or a monthly. I think we got $300 a month from him or something like that. That was enough for me to rent a place.
Yeah.
And Henley rented a place out in Topanga Canyon, which was out near the beach, near Malibu, the Malibu Hills, basically. And so, but then one of the Manson family killed somebody down the street.
Oh, wow.
And so that freaked out Henley, and he left. And I go, well, I'd already lived in Topanga. I knew it was like kind of crazy, and there were weird people around. So I figured I could take care of myself, and then so I moved into that place that Henley had rented, and I stayed there till after I left the band. Yeah.
You and Henley wrote Witchy Woman together. What was the story behind that?
So while I was in the Burritos, on that last tour in that last summer of '71, I came up with that whole guitar riff, the sections for Witchy Woman, but no lyrics at all. I was just playing it as an instrumental. And so it wasn't until after the Eagles started that Henley really liked it. They liked it, and Henley came back with a set of lyrics. So I've been saying lately that I had the music, but Henley dated the Witchy Woman, so it's his fault that whole thing. I'm not involved with that part of it.
Was that the Eagles' first number one?
No, none of those. There were 3 hits on the first album, but none of them went number one. They were all top 10.
Oh, top 10. Okay.
Yeah, but the actual first number one was a ballad. "Best of My Love" was the first number one. So go figure.
So you were with the Eagles until '75, right?
Late '75, yeah.
What kind of built up to you deciding to leave the band?
Well, so I've been thinking about that a lot because I have this new record out, right? But I've been also talking about it a lot, and So the band blew up so fast because we got together. We were with Geffen. Geffen had just started a new label that he partly owned with Atlantic Records money, and so we were already on a label with Warner Brothers. So when the first album came out, different. I mean, the people at the label probably, and they did some market testing. However they chose the singles, but the first one was "Take It Easy." That was a no-brainer, really. But it got really good promotion at the radio stations. It had money. It had a budget behind it, and so then that was a hit, top 10. So then "Witchy Woman" was the second one. It had also a push, and we were already on the road opening for Procol Harum and Jethro Tull and Yes, all kind of non-compatible,
Yeah.
And so we had a greased system. I mean, we had a machine behind us, and also they were making their bones as a new label by. They had signed Jackson Browne, Joni Mitchell, and the Eagles were the first three acts they signed, and Joni was already successful, but they broke Jackson Browne, they broke us. They were making their label be successful. Right. So it just all happened so fast. So then, what happened over the 4 years I was with them is everything changed. Every year it was very different. We were opening for those bands I mentioned, and then the second year we were headlining 3,000 seaters, and the third year we were headlining 8,000 seaters.
Wow.
And maybe being the second on the bill in a baseball stadium.
Wow.
To the last year we were headlining baseball stadiums and 10,000 people audiences regularly.
Right.
So everything showed up in our lives, I mean, drugs showed up because there were drug dealers in the hallway. It was just like that. I mean, it was looser then. We had security, but I mean, that stuff was just around, So every temptation in the world showed up, and every distraction showed up. And then there's something that happens with successful acts where they say you had your whole life to write your first album, and then now you're on the road, and we'd be out for a month, and then I'm like, oh great, I get to go home next week. Then they'd hand you another sheet that was another month of gigs. Like here you go, you're not going home, you're staying out for another 4 weeks. And then they'd then say, hey, you got to do another album, And we're like, we haven't been writing, we've been playing every night.
Yeah.
So that's called the sophomore slump. I mean, for most acts.
Yeah.
Luckily, we had J.D. Souther, Jackson Browne, Jack Timpson writing songs that we recorded. So we had actually 4 guys in the band writing, and those 3 other guys writing. So we didn't have a songwriting slump, but we had to go from touring right back in the studio. And the contracts back then said 2 albums in 1 year. You were obligated to every 6 months to deliver an album. So a lot of pressure,
Yeah. I saw Joe Walsh in an interview. He was saying that you had exited the Eagles because you were a purist, but that's not really...
No, not exactly.
Exactly true, is it?
No.
It was more of a lifestyle change than anything.
It was partly that, and also I'd been on the road with the Burritos for 2 years before the Eagles, so I'd been on the road straight for 6 years doing this whole thing, record tour for 6 years already, and I was kind of burned out on it.
Yeah.
And plus we brought Don Felder in the band, who'd been in my high school band, but a 4-piece band has air in between stuff. And every hole between lyrics is not filled with a bunch of guitar stuff. But a 5-piece band, there's more guys that want to play,
right?
And there's still the same amount of places to play. So
Right.
suddenly there was more stuff going on, and the arrangements were denser. They have to be, and a little more arranged.
Yeah.
So that was different, and I wasn't loving that. And then, just all the stuff, that I mentioned,
And I'm assuming that you and Glenn Fry must have been kind of butting heads, and I'll let you tell the story of the exit. But
yeah. So there's like when Wikipedia became a thing, I put my name in there, and I went, oh, because the story seemed centered around the fact that I poured a beer on Glenn Fry's head during a band meeting, and I was like, oh damn, that's what my career is going to be about. With historians, is like he poured a beer on Glenn Fry's head, right? So. And Glenn was being the leader, but he was being quite adamant about, we're going to do this, and we're going to do it this way, we're going to do it this, that. He was kind of taking over, I felt, and I felt not so consulted, when decisions were being made, even though I was a full partner. And
right.
So in the beginning, it was like everybody we didn't have money. We were driving ourselves in a Ford LTD station wagon, flying commercial, getting up early after a late night to fly to the next town. Or we would drive it 400, a couple of 300 miles we would drive, 200 anyway. So it was just busy. And so anyway, but the fact that I poured the beer on Glenn's head, he did take exception to that, So... But we had a very professional meeting, and we said, because we had a very busy summer, and it was the summer of '75, and like I said earlier, we were headlining stadiums and big places.
Right.
So I said, I tell you what I'll do, I'll play the rest of the summer, all through the summer season until the end of it, and then I'll leave then. So the last gig I did was at Anaheim Stadium, full, and the audience was doing the wave. That was the first time I ever saw that. We're out second base, and we're looking at 40,000 people.
Yeah.
And then I was gone. So anyway, fast forward a long time in the future. So in maybe, say 2006 or 7, I wrote Glenn a letter of apology and amends. And I didn't hear back from him, which I wasn't surprised about that, but I'm glad I sent it, right? So then 4 or 5 years later, the manager calls, says, Glenn wants to talk to you about coming back out with the band. I went, wow, okay. So he and I talked, and about halfway through that, we talked for maybe 20, 30 minutes. Halfway through that conversation, Glenn said, I got your letter. So then I did go out. We did 7 weeks rehearsal, and I played live shows with them for 25 months, did 175 shows.
Wow.
And at the last show, he gave me a big hug and said, it's been great having you out here, and this is not the end. But he passed away a few months later because he had bad rheumatoid arthritis. So he took a drug, experimental drug or something that he reacted to. So anyway, but he didn't live for us to play again. But I'm so happy that we cleaned all that up.
Yeah, that's great that y'all are able to make amends.
Yeah.
But those years, 71 to 75, and I want to pull it up here because it's just incredible. That greatest hits album from 71 to 75 is the greatest selling album in the world of all time. Beat out Michael Jackson's Thriller. And that was the years that you were with the Eagles, and you can hear Bernie Leadon all over that album. I mean, to me, that was the best days of the Eagles, and I think obviously a lot of people agree with that, or it wouldn't be the best selling in the world. But the songs, Take It Easy, Witchy Woman, Lion Eyes, Already Gone, Desperado, One of These Nights, Tequila Sunrise, Take It to the Limit, Peaceful Easy Feeling, and The Best of My Love. That's the Eagles, those songs there. I mean, of course, Hotel California is great in some of those songs, but to me, that's just that era of the Eagles is the greatest.
Yeah, and there's reasons why that it worked so well. The the vocal blend was really good.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In fact, Glenn Johns produced us, an English producer, and he actually came back and produced this latest album I just did, the Too Late to Be Cool album that I just put out. But he did the first 2.5 Eagles albums, and he famously passed on us twice. He came to Denver to see us. We did a little show for him, a showcase in the afternoon in a closed nightclub in Denver, and he listened very politely. We did about 40 minutes for him, and he said, "Wow," he said, "Yeah, you guys, I really like you, and you're all really good players and singers and all, but I'm not going to do it." And we're like, "Why?" He said, "Because Bernie and Glenn are pulling the band in two different directions, you know." That's how he felt about it. Then he went home, and then we all said, "He must have made a mistake. Get him back out here." So Geffen got him back out to L.A., and he came down to an afternoon rehearsal, and we played for him again, and he went, same thing. He goes, "Let's all go to lunch, but I'm not going to do the album," you know. And we're like, "Why?" You know, and he said the same thing. Then I think I said, "Right before we all go, Glenn, we've been working on some vocal stuff. Let us do this a cappella thing for you." And I think just like one guitar to hear the key, you know. And we sang it in the room. We put all our heads together like vocal groups do to get that great blend. We're all about 2 feet apart from each other, singing toward the center, and Glenn was right there. And we sang maybe a verse and a chorus of "Fair and Tender Ladies," old traditional song. And he went, "Okay, wait a minute." He goes, and he told me later, he heard it right away. He goes, "The vocal blend was so good and so unique, because it was our voices, so it's unique to us."
Right.
And he said later to me, he realized that's the sound I can build the albums around. And if you think about it, all the different styles that the Eagles have used in the songs, what's the same in every song is the vocal blend.
Right.
So he was right.
Yeah.
That was the unique thing, and why a big reason why it was so appealing right away, because it was so strong vocally.
Yeah. Well, after you left the group, and in between you rejoining them, what did you have going on?
Well, let's see. I had a family. I had a kid, you know. So, and there's this cool thing. Somebody said, "Do you have any regrets about? Did you ever have any regrets about leaving when you did?" And I said, "Well." So my son asked me that one time, and I said, "Well, son, if I hadn't left when I did, I probably wouldn't have met your mom, and you wouldn't be here."
Yeah.
And he went, "Good answer, Dad."
Yeah.
So, but that's how I feel about it. Is life is kind of a series of transactions, and you give this and you get that. So I left the Eagles, but I retained contractual royalty rights, so I got paid for all those units that sold for the greatest hits and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that was able to keep me going and help me raise a family and do all that stuff. And I continued playing on other people's records, I played.
You did some session work too, didn't you?
Yeah, but I was singing and playing on like Emmylou Harris records, and Ron Satin and Emmylou became very close friends, and so I actually did some shows with each of them through the years, and with both of them. And I can tell you, singing the third part with Emmylou and Linda Ronstadt is a thrill.
Oh, I could imagine.
And hearing, like in the Ryman, the voices go out and hang in the room. The vocals do, and it was like that because we didn't have a loud band. A lot of it was acoustic instruments, and those three voices, and I had to sing really strongly to keep up with them. Ronstadt has a huge voice, right? But so I wouldn't have missed that, And Glenn Johns kept using me. He'd bring me over to London or out to L.A. Or I was actually in L.A. But after I moved to Nashville, he did records here, a couple, and in L.A. So I've stayed in really close touch with him, and we're really good friends. And
yeah.
so, and other people I've worked with too.
Right. And you're still making music on your own too, right?
Yeah, just I just won't quit, I guess.
Do you have anything new coming up?
Well, so we just released this Too Late to Be Cool album, and then we got this Christmas song that I wrote so it's my take about what the holidays actually are, and it's called Holidaze, HOLIDAZE, Holidays. And it's about the reality of the holidays now is that it starts well before Halloween.
Yeah.
Starts the beginning of October, right? And it goes through Halloween, Thanksgiving, Black Friday, the commercial stuff.
It's ridiculous.
Christmas, then New Year's, then all the after holiday sales. Then it's football playoff season, all the way through the Super Bowl. The end of the second week of February. The next week is Valentine's Day, and you could just say it just keeps going.
Yeah.
If you look at what they put up in drugstores, like the decoration, that's like there's only about 5 holidays anymore that they put up decoration.
Yeah.
And Valentine's Day, and then St. Patrick's Day, and then 4th of July, and then and then pretty soon we're back to Halloween.
Well, I think that'll resonate well with people.
Yeah.
Because
and I even talk in there about the credit, like you're going to run up the credit card, but hey, that's what life's all about.
Do you are you out playing any shows?
Yeah, so I did one in September for Americana Fest, the City Winery, and I'm doing a New Year's Eve show, and then, but we have an agent, and so probably mostly will wait till the tour season starts again, maybe March, April.
Yeah.
But
have you ever thought about, which I know you did the reunion with the Eagles for the history of the Eagles tour, have you ever thought about, or have you ever done anything with like Chris Hillman?
Yeah, back in the day I did, because Chris would go out, he did a bunch of solo records, and he would go out supporting those, including into Europe, and so I would go out with him sometimes when I felt like getting out of the house, And we're still in close touch. We're very close. But Chris is kind of semi-retired now, so I don't know if we would.
Yeah. Do you think there's any chance of you going back on the road with the Eagles anytime?
Never know.
Never know. Well, you heard it here. Well, I so appreciate you, Bernie, for coming out, and I hope to get to catch one of those shows pretty soon, and I'm excited for all of the new music coming out and everything. But thank you for coming and doing this. It's been very interesting to walk through the years with you.
Yeah, thank you, Dillon. It's been really fun meeting you and getting to do this finally. Appreciate it.
This was great. Well, I thank you all for listening, and be sure to go stream that new album, stream all of Bernie's music, and be looking for him to come out for a show, and y'all go see him, because like I said at the beginning, an icon.
Well, thank you.
Thank y'all.